opportunity for you to be introduced to a few school and student helpers. If there is a space or a place to improve the lives of our children, we know a few families and business owners who have made it their business to answer the call for help and provide a solution to those challenges that impact our children and eventually us all. We could not just choose one kiddo to save, so we are asking for your help to reach more. Join Keeping Your Kids Safe as we identify some of the problems and share a few solutions that have been created just for you. Hello, ladies. I'm always very surprised when I show up online. I'm like, okay, I made it here. I don't know exactly what's going on, but whatever. So, hello, welcome. How is everybody doing today?
Well,
fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you for having us.
This is amazing. What a cool lineup. This is going to be one for the books, y'all. I know we got this. Okay, so I normally just start by let's do and the people are going, please don't let them start jackhammering up front. This is going to be one of those days.
Okay. I already see them.
Right? I'm like, oh no. Okay, so I'll go ahead. We're going to do Red Robin. So we're going to go ahead and give everybody an opportunity to give your name, your business, and what you're doing. And then I'll go ahead and give the synopsis of the show. Okay, so we'll start with Kristen. I'm going to say your name right because I don't have to compete.
You don't have to. That's wonderful. Yes, I am Kristen Norai, and I am a transitioned teacher. I left the classroom 2 school years ago and am now working as a professional development trainer and coach for teachers, in addition to working with parents on how to advocate for students with special needs. And that is something that I hope to eventually turn into a real business and have up and running to be able to support. But I've been doing this work now for about a year and absolutely love it. The reason I made the switch from public education to this outside world, a lot of people always say, well, why did you leave it if you loved it so much? I left it because I didn't feel like I was making a difference from the inside of one small school in one small district in one small state. And by getting, onto the outside or into the outside world of education, I'm hoping to have more of a global impact because I really feel like, a lot of the things with our system are broken and we need to help fix that.
Come on now. There we go. Now you understand. Save our kids. Thank you very much for being here. Okay, Michelle, I'll go to you next.
I am Michelle Lee Murder. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and my mission is to connect and empower humanity by giving them the tools, the training, and the system to be able to come together so that everyone is seen, heard, and understood. Yes, it is increasing people's sales up to 300%, but the main purpose of this methodology and tool is to be able to truly make people matter and empower parents, teachers, and children to be able to live their best life and all join together in a community of people loving more and judging less.
Like that. Love it. Come on now. All right, Dr. Juanita.
Hi, I'm Dr. Juanita. And one of the favorite things I always say, you are the first person that you lead. I am a business owner, a coach, an author, a mother. I also work for, the small state, one of the smallest states. I'm from Delaware, for DAISY, which is our advocacy organization to help train our childcare providers. I have our families own a childcare business for over 3 decades. So I'm actually, before the kids come to you, we get them. So our goal is to help our children to be able to come into the school system with social and emotional skills. And also one of my things as well is being able to help parents to advocate. Having a child that had a disability, I had to advocate for myself. And also, in addition to that, I help Christian business owners grow their business in 90 days. That's Dr. Juanita.
All right. Oh, you like me. Yes, had to advocate for my son, right? So that's how I became an advocate for the same reason. I had a special needs kiddo, and I had to figure out how he was not going to be a statistic, So my name is Tabitha Barron. I am the founder of Keeping Your Kids Safe. I created a platform that allows each child to effectively communicate their way home. Parents get a text message during the process, and we don't just cover the yellow bus. we cover walkers and bikers, car riders, childcare bus riders, and the yellow bus, because our whole entire purpose is keeping your kids safe. So one of the reasons why I decided to do Save Our Kids was because most of the time I am met with these strange objections that says, that's not needed. We don't have that as a problem. This is not an issue. Let me tell you, it's a definite issue. And this is how we know. So if we believe that KPIs and the metrics that we use actually will let us know what problems we need to solve, let me share a few, right? So when I started this company in 2014, there were 55 million children listed going to school every single year. So in 2021, and the people are going to show up. Hopefully you guys can't hear that. 2021, 49.4 million children go to school every single school year, with 32.6 million of them being K through 8. In 2031, they're estimating only 46.9 million will go to school. There is a steady decline of students going into school. So you have to ask yourself why. It's another stat. So do you know a lot of students do not get multiracial leaders in their schools? But did you know that if a student has at least one Black teacher, it increases the high school graduation by 7%? And if they have two, it increases it by 32%, right? And inside that 7%, you have 13% that will enroll into college. So we don't know that, right? Another thing we don't know is 90% of our students are sleep deprived. Why is that? What are we doing? And what is happening in the school and at home that makes put children in a position to not be able to get necessary sleep that help to recharge their businesses, their bodies, and get them prepared and ready? But here's another one, Kristen. 4 million teachers in the United States across 90,000 schools. 35% of them want to quit. Yeah. Okay, that's a metric we need to be paying attention to, because here's the thing. If your teacher, most of your teachers or 35% of your teachers want to quit, what are they doing in the classroom to the child? So why are we doing that? But keep in mind, the numbers by itself, you're looking at, this impacts 18 million families in the United States, right? So that's a problem. And then on top of that, since the pandemic, so we know that they're about a year and a half behind, but since the pandemic, they say 42 states are reporting a decline in reading on grade level. Okay, so let's give you some more stats. You're like, this is nuts. So 64% of 8th graders read below reading level. Mm-hmm. And look, she's nodding her head.
No
That's
doubt.
a cry. That's a cry for help. That's saying, education, you need help, and we're here to help you. So stop pushing us back out the doors. It's unnecessary. Mm-hmm. Only 36% are at or above reading level, according to the National Children's Book and Literacy Alliance, right? Mm-hmm. 36%. Do the math. 36% on 35 million children K through 8. That number is not okay. Okay. And then the national, NCES says in 2019, the scores were lower than the ones in 2017. So it's still a steady decline.
Wow.
So, and then in Tennessee, this is one I wanted to make sure, 60% of 3rd graders in Tennessee did not pass the comprehensive assessment test. Okay. So for all those educators and all those leaders who say that we're not necessary, that you don't need the help and support, I'm here to tell you that if we're going against the metrics, you need help and support. And as a parent, as an auntie, as a sister, as a friend, as a business owner, and as a product of your education system, I want to help. So please let me know, along with my friends, how we can do that. So this is the reason why we're here, because I feel like I was talking to a couple other people and I said that it turns out that a lot of us are out here working towards this, but we are not making the headway that we need to make. And even during a pandemic, after the pandemic, so for me, the pandemic was one of those things where I looked at it as an opportunity. One, the parents had an opportunity to see what their children were doing in the classroom that they were unaware of, one. The second thing was it was able to come aboard and say, okay, how can I help to improve my education, the education of my child and during the process? And a lot of people didn't see it that way. So right now we do know that we are struggling in ways that we should not. So I'm going to open it up for you guys. What do you think about the stats I gave? And Kristen, your post was amazing because you actually told you didn't leave because of no pay and this, that, and all. You left for very specific reasons. So I'll let you go start.
Sure. I think my wake up call on when it was time for me to make that change, it was during COVID, and I was serving as a behavior interventionist and SEL coordinator. For those of you who don't know the language of education, social emotional learning is SEL. And I'm in North Carolina, which is, not the biggest fan of SEL. But I had an administrator actually look me in the eye and say, you have to understand that SEL is just not a priority right now. And this was right in the throes of COVID. And my thought and reaction was, well, if it's not a priority now, then it's never going to be. And I'm not going to be able to do my job if I don't have support from, above. Ironically, that same school district did away with the SEL curriculum that summer. And everybody who had jobs like mine, we all were cut. So I was looking at going back into the classroom versus being in a support position. But the thing that I think a lot of people don't know that's going on with schools is I was in a support position, but I was never able to do my job because we were so short teachers that I was constantly substituting. So I might go in on a Monday and cover 6th grade social studies, 8th grade science in the front desk for a few hours. And, got to the point that students would say to me, oh, you're my favorite sub. And I thought, oh, this isn't right. And so I left public education, but it's because I wasn't getting to do what I was there to do. And that teacher shortage is not a shortage. It's actually a retention problem. There are plenty of us, highly qualified teachers, that are walking out the door because we're finally putting ourselves first and saying enough is enough. Teacher no longer means teacher. It means teacher, counselor, mentor, friend, confidant, parent, you name it, advocate. There are so many hats that teachers are asked to put on, and now we're taking away their planning times and making them cover classes and gaslighting them of, oh, we can just meet before school, or, oh, you can just do that on your even your evening. It's not fair. And it's time that teachers have stood up and said, enough is enough. We've got to change this.
First of all, yeah, when you said that, when I read it, you said it's a retention problem. And I've met a couple other people that kind of say the same thing. And so as many teachers that have left to do curriculum building, professional development, why is it that they're having such a hard time receiving that so that they can make changes is my question, because that is a part I think that is bothering me the most, because you guys are screaming, but everybody on the outside is like, you need to pay them more, pay them. It's not pay. I've been inside there. It's not necessarily pay. And I know teachers who are making a good amount of money. It has everything to do with some other things. And that definitely impacts a student, period.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing too is it's not about the money. One of the things I discovered when I left is most of the jobs I was applying for were going to offer me less money than I made as a teacher, which just blows my mind. But the thing that scares me is teachers that are walking away from education completely, that are just saying, I'm done, I can't do it anymore, versus ones that are jumping into the ed tech world and trying to still help better education. I think the problem is teachers' hands are tied. Even, principal at the school level, hands are tied. It's all based on Board of Education and policymakers. And it goes back to that and looking at, community stakeholders getting involved in the school settings.
That's important to know. Dr. Juanita, do you have any thoughts about this?
I 100% agree. I know a few teachers who have walked away, and it's not about the pay; it's about what's going on. And social and emotional skills are so big. One of the things that we have to understand is at birth, children are learning. It's not when you get to kindergarten. And sometimes if you can't manage your emotions in pre-K as a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, how are you going to manage your emotions older? And so when I look at one of my friends who have walked away, well, she didn't walk away completely. She went to a different thing. was, you're right, her hands were tied. You love what you do. That's it. They love teaching. She loves teaching. However, when it's driven by numbers or policy, as you say, and it tends to tie their hands. It tends to make them feel like, well, should I be looking at the numbers, or should I be looking at, did this child eat? Why is this child hid now? This child is telling me that their mother said they can do this. And growing up, to be perfectly honest with you, my mother was a single parent and I was the oldest. So some of these children are taking care of younger children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In their homes. And as my mom, I'm a mom. Remember, I call myself a mom. My son and daughter in love had to go to work. So I was here working from home with my grandkids in school. So I was able to hear some of the things that was going on in class and some of the other issues that were going on at home, and even teachers saying, turn on your camera, pick your head up, you're asleep. So it is all across the board. And as I said, I get them younger. And even at the your early education childcare level, there are a lot of policies and procedures that we have to combat before you even get them. And that's one of the things that Daisy is doing is the Delaware. Is NACEY, the Delaware Education for Young Children. For those who don't know now, one of the things that we're doing is going after the policymakers to help them to say, we need help at this level. It doesn't start at for kindergarten. It starts at pre-K. Those are some of my thoughts.
I had to put my mute on because they're literally why I came here, and I keep messing with the things. I keep the QR codes are not working for me yet, but that's all right. We have time. I agree with you, and I do know about NACEY. I do agree. I think that a lot of this has to do with the fact that the people who need to make the decisions are not necessarily in the classrooms to see it. And so I talk about Six Sigma and the fact that at the end of the day, the reason why Six Sigma was created was because you needed a problem to solve. When you have many parts per million, and then you're only having one or two failures, you don't have much work to work towards. So you reduce it down to a smaller pool, so that you can see more of the failures, what that's going to roll out to be. Oh, I need to put some comments up. So the thing about it is that that's really good, right? That's why we do those things, but they're looking at the metrics only. And the outcomes are not favorable. And who are they favorable for? I just think that that's where my problem is, right? I just think that it's not okay. But Michelle actually helps me to understand a few things that I feel like are really important to say, right? Really important to say. I want to make sure to be clear because Michelle, I'm going to take this comment down for a second. When I met Michelle and I started talking, we started talking about education and how communication is key to a lot of things. What I learned was I was dealing with or was engaging with one teacher who told me, I have 25 kids in the classroom. If 10 of them don't get it, I don't have time to try to catch them up. And that is why I was like, I need to have Michelle come in and have a conversation about that. So I want to go ahead and share. Thank you all for chiming in. Your comments are very, very much appreciated. So Phil says, he's sorry to hear the school system didn't empower you and enable you to make bigger differences. That's where I think that a lot of the problems are coming in, because we don't empower our teachers or our leaders to do the things that are so important. So go ahead, Michelle. I'll let you go ahead and chime in on this subject.
Well, our teachers they're basically raising our children for the future. They spend the most time with them. We need to empower our teachers and give them the tools that they need and give them the community that they need so that they can strive to help our kids. Our kids, we can't leave them behind. If 10 of our kids out of 25 or 30 don't get it, what happens to those kids? So how can we empower them so that every child gets the education that they need? They feel like their teachers understand them. Their teachers do understand them. And every child is heard. Just because they think little Johnny over there has ADHD, may not be the case. It may be his wiring system. He may just get bored easily. And so they need to give the environment to him that he needs so he can strive, as well as Sarah over there, who needs a structured system. But the way the system is set up is they're putting everybody into a box and saying, okay, everybody fits that space, do it that way.
Yes, that is that's a big thing. So Kristen, I know that you being in a classroom, you understand what that looks like. So I get it that you may feel like you don't have enough time to take care of and do those things. But how can we help to actually get our students? Because I'm sorry, with a special needs he's now a young adult, but as a special needs child, he was subjected to potentially not making it through, because if I wasn't as active in his life as I was, he would not have been able to graduate. And he would have been, like, when he started school at the age of 3, he was already a year behind developmentally, right? But then when we go in, when I am pushing through, he was first of all, insurance companies, oh, he'll catch up. Who are you to say he's going to catch up? But he wasn't going to ever catch up because of what other things we were placing in his backpack, whatever ability he was going to have. And so 3 years behind turns into 5 years behind, being unable to do for yourself. So how do we approach as parents? How do we approach, or what do we need to do? Because there's not supposed to be any H's, right? What do we need to do as parents to help make sure that our kids are getting what we need, what they need? I'm sorry.
I'm going to jump in on this one. I'm actually in the process of co-authoring a book with a colleague, Christine Jones. And the concept of our book is bridging that educational gap between home and school. And the idea in our writing is that we are trying to give as much support to parents on how to learn to advocate for their child. Because that is absolutely right, Tabitha. You're right. If you are not an advocate for your child, a lot of times your child falls to the wayside, not to anybody's fault. I mean, I don't want to say it's a teacher saying, oh, I don't care. But when you have 25 others that are, squeaky wheels, you have to follow the law and do what, the law says. If they put something in writing, you've got to move forward. And it means that child that doesn't have one speaking up may not get what they need. I, being a special educator first, before I became a classroom teacher, the biggest thing goes back to teacher prep programs. Gen ed teachers that are teaching just general education, kindergarten, first, second, they need to be trained as special education teachers because they are with those kids all day long. A lot of times those specialized services that kids are receiving on their IEP might be for 45 minutes to an hour to 2 hours a day, but the rest of the time they're with those gen ed teachers who will never receive training on what to do. And so I think that's one of the biggest frustrations. When I became a classroom teacher, I was only required to take an intro to special education class, and it was theory-based. It didn't tell you anything about what to do in the classroom with students. And that's the biggest complaint I think that teachers end up having is the number of needs that walk through their door. You can't say, oh, I teach second grade, because you don't just teach second grade. You teach the 20 kids walking through your door, whether they're at kindergarten level or 11th grade level. They're all second graders, but you have to meet all of their needs. And that's where differentiation of instruction comes in. And that's something I do a lot of training on, of how to individualize the instruction so that kids can make progress and show growth. But again, those classroom teachers don't have that basic training. We can't expect them to do something we never taught them to do.
Very true. That's very true. My son was fortunate for his elementary school. He actually had 2 teachers that were dual trained, right? So they did the gen ed and then they did the special ed. So that actually helped a lot as far as that's concerned. So this is good. So you're building something so that you can help those teachers. Is this going to be something that the teacher will be responsible for going to get, or is this going to be something that the school will have to purchase for professional development in order to get that taken care of?
A lot of times, yeah, if it's a training, like a formal one, like the company I'm working for, schools are going to have to purchase that, if not district level. Sometimes schools aren't even allowed to make that decision. It comes from even higher above. But a lot of times, teachers are always active learners. We have to have so many credits every year to have continuing learning. And that's something that I think needs to be offered more and more for teachers, is options for how to learn how to differentiate, because there are lots of options online for free courses that teach you how to do that. And with AI coming into play now, there is now a version of ChatGPT that's teacher based, and it's called teachermagic.ai. You can write a differentiated lesson plan in 5 minutes on there. I am blown away by it. It's one of those that I went, oh, maybe I could go back to the classroom. It wouldn't be so hard. I could plan in 10 minutes. You literally can type in what the objective is that you're looking for, what you want to teach, what grade level, and then tell it, okay, differentiate this for 3rd grade, differentiate this for older kids. And it spits it back out for you. Now, it's not going to be perfect every time. You still have to tweak it, but that's any lesson. You have to tweak anything you're doing with kids depending on their needs. But it's a game changer. I mean, it's hours of work that's being minimized down into, such a short amount of time, that it's going to allow teachers to work a lot smarter and not feel as overwhelmed, hopefully.
So imagine if you could crack the code for every child that was in your class and know exactly how you needed to present your curriculum and help every student, and even understand if they show up under stress, how to bring them down. If there's bullying, how to bring that conflict down. If you understand the wiring system of each individual child in that classroom, the amount of empowerment that you could provide them would be mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
I teach a training on challenging behaviors in the classroom, because of course we still call our child care providers teachers. We don't call them babysitters. We don't say daycare, because we spend a lot of time with your children as well. And so and it looks at how do we deal with each individual child as opposed to as a classroom together. And so there are different metrics, but there are different teaching styles. And so one of the things we look at is emotions. How do you feel today? What happened? And so the teachers, you're right, CEUs are important. In the childcare industry, a lot of teachers are gearing towards that training itself, because before and now after COVID, they're finding that it's even more challenging. And one of the other things that I would suggest to any parent who feel as though their child may be who wants to be more of an advocate for their child, to look at their child care provider. We do help. I know when I was it's called a 504 plan, which is not an IEP, because my daughter didn't qualify for an IEP because they tested her and she was smarter, but she needed other coping skills. One of the things is going to the child care provider and getting them to help you with writing up the information, and not allowing, this is a situation that came up. The doctor was like, well, they don't need it. I say, no, honey, come back, because we see them more than the doctor does. And making notes. There are a lot of, like you said, there are a lot of systems and a lot of technology that we even use where we can make notes, daily notes that you can take to the doctor and that you can take to the school to help your child, help advocate. It starts at the home, it starts at the child care, it starts at every level of education.
That's very true. I agree with that for sure. I think that I have been in different things where it seems as though oh my gosh, that they're always looking for a reason not to help, or always looking for a reason why not to do, not to give that support. So for me, I remember that I seen where they were only teaching him gross motor skills, right? Only the gross motor skills. And he doesn't hold a pencil properly. Help me understand, what do I need to do, right? And he says, and they were like, oh, we're only going to teach him the gross motor skills. We're not going to teach him the other stuff. And I was like, oh, I think that that's wrong. And we're just not going to have that happen, right? And when that happened, we were able to, I went home. This is the thing. I went home and figured out what is it that he needs to do in order to be able to hold his own pencil and write. I didn't know. So I'm not, Am I a teacher? Yes, because we are all teachers. I am an example for anyone and everyone who is watching me, regardless of age, right? So we are all teachers. But I'm the first teacher my child sees. And so I had to go home and figure that out. And so I devised a way that forced him to use just his two fingers, right? His thumb and his finger. And then within that year, he was then holding a pencil properly. They asked me what I did, and I said I just made it a game, right? So it was what I did or what I chose to do to make it a point that I didn't. So he did not have to have that, right? Or he did not have to only have gross motor skills, because I didn't want him to be a football player mowing everybody over, but I needed him to be able to write his name. And their answer to me was hand over hand. And I was like, no, that's not a forever situation. So I get that. So what are your thoughts as far as for Dr. Juanita? I know that they were talking about universal Kender. They were bringing the students in earlier, children in earlier. And that if we're not doing very good with the ones we have, why would parents and families decide to send their children into school by 3 and 4, so you can have 2 additional more years to not to have the metric continue to read in a downward trend?
Whew, that's a good question. It's a hot topic all over. One of the things I want to say, when you did the hand over hand, it doesn't work for left-handed children. I'm a lefty. I'm a lefty in the room. And my nephew is a left hand, and his mother and my brother-in-law are right-handed. So I had to help him with the left-hand side writing, because of course we write different, where it's not opposite, not backwards as they try to say it is. We just write on the left side. So that is so true. It amazes me how they think that 3 and 4-year-olds are ready for school. And I've had this conversation with some actual teachers. I said, unfortunately, some 3-year-olds still have accidents. And I don't just mean, I mean both. And it's against the law to go in the bathroom with them. How are you going to manage that? Yeah, we do not go in the bathroom with them. We stand outside and we watch. We don't watch them use the bathroom, but we watch, because unfortunately only one child can go in there at a time, and it's not the same sex. So if the child has an accident, throw up, whatever happens, that child has to be able to manage and take care of themselves and then still sit all that. And so it is a very hot topic. I have no idea how they're going to do it. I don't even know why they thought that made sense. And why do you think that this is going to be beneficial to the child? Because one of the things that we still find, what happens when school closes down?
Yes.
What happens when I heard that in Texas, school is already closed due to COVID. And if your child is in full day, what are you supposed to do if this is the only program that they're in?
So that is still another example of the decision makers and those ones who are not in a classroom making decisions and judgments based off of numbers only and the financial benefit to them, right?
Money. And some of it is money.
All of it is money.
Because you're getting federal funding, and they want to get federal funds. And this is something that I learned from a administrator who was in the classroom and went to administration. She was saying, so we're not in September. Some of our kids went back, my grandkids went back. But as you go from September all the way through to like October, and Kristen, you can correct me, they already get their federal money. So sometimes they try to pull the child out or send them to a different school. You say no.
Yeah.
Because they already counted that money and they've already probably spent that money. So even when you look at the childcare industry, they are even getting money. So sometimes bringing them in at 3 and 4 works, because you get the added benefit of money. That doesn't always trickle down to the teacher or in the classroom, or if they need special sensory boards or different things like that to help them cope.
Okay, so I didn't realize they were bringing in money so much earlier. But at the end of the day, there's a couple of red flags. I mean, flag on a play. One, You are not in the classroom, so don't do that. And if the law says you're not allowed to go and take care of that child's accidents, then why would you bring them into an environment where they cannot be cared for? So that is another example of you not thinking far enough into the future to understand what is the impact to the family, to the school, and then to that child. It's nasty for the child to ask a child, well, you go in there and figure that out. And go ahead and get some soap and water and you do this. But they're not being taught that because they're supposed to be at home or with a caregiver until at least the age of 5. So now we're moving the number back so that you can get the money in. But if you would solve the problem where it is, then you would not have to pull in children 2 years before they were ready, right? Because finances is an easy way to divide a group of people who has it and who does not have it. And I say, I don't have it. If you see the steady decline, I read the numbers, right? You can go look up the statistics. Dr. Google has them, and then a few other things too. If you look at the statistics, because that's public information, because this is your public dollars, and you start to notice that the money being used, they're losing money because parents have made a decision to no longer continue to participate in an educational system that will not ultimately benefit the child in the long run. But now we come to the point where how are we able to it's not supposed to be a how. We are going to use things like Michelle has a way, she has figured out that, and I'm glad that she's here because I could not figure out why some people would say to me, you're off-putting, or the things that you were say was just, one way or another, wasn't received very well. But ultimately it comes down to the fact that if I need to be hugged and you come up and slap me or punch me, I'm not going to receive that as the type of love that I need, right? But I'm doing it lovingly. That's just the way I communicate. So what age do you think, or where could we start with the communication or improving the communication with families, with the children, and with the school when it comes to you, Michelle?
You can crack kids' codes at age 3 and 4. The parents, if they have the training, they can understand, even when that child's born, what their bank code is. They're going to understand what their wiring is. So my oldest son is an exact opposite of me. So for 18 years, I did it wrong because there was no manual on how to communicate with my son. And I felt like a failure. I felt like I let him down, and I did, but I didn't know any better. And I, for the life of me, couldn't figure it out. And no matter how hard I tried, we couldn't understand each other until I found the bank methodology, until I found a way to actually crack the code of the other human beings in my life so that we could all connect, so that we could all learn to speak the same language. And that's the power, because if I look back now, all the signs were there for what my son's code was from the day he was born. Yeah. I just didn't know how to communicate in that language. And so for that reason, I stressed him out his whole life, and I felt like a failure. And he felt like I didn't understand him.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, right? Because that I ran into that too. When you're sitting there struggling to communicate with someone and they just don't get it, or and you're like, am I saying it wrong? Is this not the right thing? What are we doing? Why is that? Why can't we just communicate like everybody else? But it's just not that. It's just we're not speaking the same languages. Like I said to you, it was how I was stringing my sentences together. It was never what I was saying. It was how I was putting everything together. And that's made the difference in how I communicated with them. Right. And that's with everybody. I feel like I've gotten better about that, kind of thing. So it's made it a little bit easier. But Kristen, so they talk about the fact that if half of your class is failing, how is that success for a school or a teacher? I'm interested.
In my opinion, it's not success. I would look at that and say, if I were the teacher of that class, I'd say, if half my kids are failing, what am I not doing? Obviously it's a teacher problem, not a learning problem. And that's something that, it's hard to accept as a teacher and step back and recognize they didn't learn it versus I didn't teach it well. And there's a very big difference. I think it's important though, at the same time, to look at each individual child and their growth. So a child may be failing, but they may have made 2 years growth in that year, and it's not accounted for in any test score. So for example, when I taught third grade, I had a brand new child from China who knew 4 words of English. He left me reading on a second grade level, but I taught third grade. So on paper, he failed, and it didn't show that he made any gains. And that was something that was very frustrating for me as a teacher, because, they look at the whole class and test scores, not what kind of kids were made up in that class. And something that I talk a lot about, and it kind of overlaps here, is, the whole concept of trauma and the amount of kids that are coming into our buildings now with trauma and invisible backpacks filled with stuff that we just don't know about. If we would just stop, and instead of, being angry with them or frustrated with their behavior, instead of saying, why are you doing that? Being able to say, what are you going through and how can I help you? Because communication or behavior is always, a form of communication. So that uptick in behavior that you're going to see when kids are failing is part of the problem too, which brings me back to how you have to teach kids basic needs and make them feel safe. We've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't know where your dinner's coming from, you don't know how to multiply, and you don't care either. So that's another thing. If a kid is hungry, give them something to eat. If a kid is tired, let them take a nap. It's not that child's fault. They're born into their environment. We can be as angry as we want at the adults for creating the environment, but we shouldn't hold the kids accountable for stuff that they can't control. So really, catering towards those kids with high needs. If you do that for every kid, if you meet your highest needs kid, everybody else will benefit, because they're all going to benefit from what you're doing for that extra kid. And then it's not, it's so much more work to help this one child. It's, what am I doing that I can change everybody and help everybody grow?
Right. That's a very good point. I just have to say, a lot of it comes down to the numbers, right? And so one of the things I'm trying to understand is, what can parents do differently than what they're doing right now? That's one. We all need to answer that question. And the other thing is that, why is it not that the teacher it's not necessarily the teacher's fault. It's according to what has been given to them from upper management, right? So upper management says, these are what you have to do. This is what you're required to do, and I expect you to do that. But when you do not make the grade, when you do not hit those milestones, what is the consequence? Because the consequence cannot still just be the families and the children. It has to be elsewhere. So can you answer to that? I'm gonna go ahead and go on mute for a minute.
I think you're absolutely right. And we do have to take a look at that closer. That's a challenging question for me, because that's one of those, if a teacher is having problems over and over, then it's our job as the administrators in that building to fix it. And what I see happens a lot of times, it's, no, we'll just push that teacher to a limit till they leave, and it's not our problem anymore. And that's something that I think happens a lot in a lot of, corporations even. Somebody's not good at what they're doing or doesn't, meet your expectations, push them out instead of giving them help. And that's something, as a teacher, I've never been able to understand, because that's the whole purpose of my job, is to help somebody learn. So why would you not help that teacher and say, hey, you're really struggling, you need a mentor. Hey, let's do an action plan so that we can be monitoring and looking at the data. And the more you do that, usually the better a teacher can become at their job. But unfortunately, it's a lot of work for administrators to do that. So a lot of times it just becomes, make them miserable till they go, change their classroom, give them the worst kids, give them the hard parents, and don't answer their emails, don't support them. And, teachers leave and go to a new building. And that principal does a disservice when that new building calls to get that recommendation, and they say, oh yeah, they're wonderful. And now the problem's not theirs anymore. So that's the other thing that happens too. And district hopping, not checking up on, hey, this teacher just came to this district from next door. Maybe I need to call and find out why they left. And that's something that I've seen a lot of, where it's, you lost your job in one state and you're working in another. How is that possible? Holding teachers accountable and at high standards the way we should be.
Well, I think that it should be joint.
Yeah.
I think it should be joint. I think that if the teachers are failing, I think that the management should also be pulled aside as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it the parents need to do or understand in order to improve the outcome for their child? And what services could we offer to them that is going to be able to support them? Because ultimately, our tax dollars are paying all of the teachers' salaries, period.
Mm-hmm.
I am over it. I'm done listening to people who say that we don't count because we don't have children in the school systems.
Oh.
Those children end up being our teachers, our doctors, our nurses, and everything else in this country and then elsewhere. So at the end of the day, my tax dollars has to count for something. And my school taxes are just ridiculous. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too, but I want to be clear, what can we do? Because this is one of the things I want to make sure that when we walk away from here, that there people have things actionable items that they can take and be able to apply in their schools, with their children, and inside their family homes.
Tabitha, could I give a little input here? I want to add something for advocating for your child. And I'm just going to tell a quick little story about my son when he was in his last 2 years of high school and COVID hit and he went online and his social skills disappeared and he was isolated and he was failing one of his classes. And when I reached out to the counselor, she said, there's absolutely nothing we can do. And if I would have tried to advocate in my language, I would have completely blew it up. So I took a step back. I cracked her code. I cracked the email, and I've responded in her language. She set up a Zoom meeting with me. I literally laid out my son's code. I laid out the cards. I laid out how he's wired, how he learns, what his values are. She said, not only am I going to change him from that class, I also recommend he change 2 other classes. So something was absolutely impossible to be done. She did, and she changed him out of 2 of the other classes that didn't fit him, all within a half an hour conversation. And she said, this is the best conversation I've ever had with a parent. Being able to advocate for your child, sometimes you have to pause with a purpose. How is this other person showing up, and how can I speak to them so that they understand what I need?
You just nailed it.
Taking your emotions out of it. That's wonderful. Taking your own emotions out of it, because you look at it as, they wrote this, and you were like emotional. So you, like you said, you would have blew it up. But once you took the time to speak to them that way. And I know some of my family members, they do go to private schools, and this happened as well during COVID with some of the athletes. They have seen that that sportsmanship, that community had them depressed. In this school, they took the opportunity to have additional meetings and have Zoom and have things where they could come together and build some type of community. And some of that happens when we still not always been at the home. And let's be honest, a lot of these parents are working jobs, and a lot of these parents are trying to put food on the table. A lot of these parents, when COVID hit, they lost jobs. I used to teach online all around the world, and I heard so many countless stories where restaurants had to literally shut down, and it was the family restaurant. Mm-hmm. Thank God that our business didn't shut down. We are a family business, so we operated because we had some children that still needed services inside of COVID. So we were still open, and my sister was able to pay her staff, but a lot of them didn't. And that frustration, like you talk about trauma, affects the home. We found that there, of course, abuse went up, child abuse, spousal abuse, home abuse, all of those things went up in the midst of COVID, because people weren't able to cope. So I love that story about cracking the code and finding out and being able to navigate that. And a lot of getting involved in your school. I worked 2 jobs as a single parent, and I still was like, I'm emailing everybody, I'm showing up. I am known for emailing, starting with legislative. My council person, my House of Representatives, I'm that person. Put my hand up in the air because I can. Right, you can Google it. Google the person, your congressperson. Google who makes laws for your state, your city, down to the board of education. Google them and start emailing them. I have a quick story. My nephew had an issue on the football field, and my brother-in-law called me, and he was like, a coach from another team put his hands on my nephew. My nephew's young, he's a minor, and this is an adult. Yes, and he called me because he said, "You know what to do." Before I was in New York, before I could halfway get home, I was Googling. But I sent off so many emails. The principal of the school, and I'm saying he goes to a prestigious private school in the state of Delaware. I'm not going to tell you the name, but he does. They were one congressperson got back to me and said, if it's not handled, you let me know. And before the end of the day, he was getting my brother-in-law was getting phone calls. Was like, we need to meet. We're going to meet. Our goal was not to have the coach lose his job. He was young. 2 years prior to that, he was playing with my nephew on the football field. So let's think about where his mind was. His mind was, this is my team. It was the same team he played for, he coaches for. He was young. So his mind said, you're right, cracking the code. Where was his mind when he pushed my nephew?
Yeah.
So
this is amazing. This is great. I love this. When this all works out, when we all come together and we start having these conversations, I think it opens up so many other options for everyone. That's what I want to say. And great story for both of you, because that's how we learn. We actually are going to learn from the different examples that we've had to deal with. So what I hear today is that we have a book that is possible for teachers to have, and that will be out in the next couple of months, I think, right?
It's really for teachers to give to parents. Parents will be the ones that'll benefit from. The goal is that will launch next month.
Nice. Okay, we're right on time. Let's go.
We're meeting with the formatter tonight, so it's getting really real.
So look, really real now. Just what you thought, I'm just going to go ahead and do this simple guide.
Right.
And then the next thing you know, it turns into something else. So good for you. Yes, I'm excited about this, right? And then from Michelle, I see the impact for all of you, actually. I see the impact of it being that the reading skills will improve. So no longer are you looking at, what did I say, 36% are at and above reading level. That is so sick. Okay, you're talking in the millions, and your millions of kids cannot read on grade level. And then that means that they're failing those tests and they're reading everything. But Michelle offers an opportunity for not to have the teachers to have to redo everything. But wouldn't it be beautiful to be able to say, this child learns this way, this child learns this way, and this child learns this way. I got 3 different groups, or maybe 4 different groups in the same classroom, but being able to teach it in a way that it hits and resonates with all of them versus just one or two of those groups. So this is something that is achievable. So teachers, administrators, if you're interested in improving your test scores and your reading scores and your graduation scores, contact Michelle and have a conversation with her and figure out how she's going to be able to do that. And then Kristen and Christine have this book. I'm gonna have to concentrate on that.
Well, we're Kristen Lynn and Christine Lynn, so that doesn't make it any easier.
No, I was like, no. And so being able to get your book and being able to do that, but understanding teachers are not babysitters. They're not. They're here to help. I teach. This is what I teach. I teach life skills. I tell my kids all the time, For 18 years, you get to learn what to do, when to do it, how to do it, clean the house, wash your butt, wash your clothes, things like that. All of those life skills, and then all those extra ins and outs that we need to learn. And then you go to school to learn the academics, because although I know a couple of the academics, I don't know enough for you to be solid in your life. And then the community is there to help bring in the rear, right? Hey, don't be kicking over that trash can. Get off that person's porch. And I'm going to tell your mom that you just busted that window, right? So that's what this is about, kind of pulling everybody together and saying, we want to see the success of that child. But Dr. Juanita said now I know how to help you get your legislation changed. Mm-hmm. So all of you ladies have brought it in today. You actually told parents, or help parents and teachers and administrators how, without saying how they're able to successfully get our children to get those numbers up, our children's in a desired outcome, with a desired outcome. I just want to be clear. Our tax dollars pay for the schools that we're fed into. And so I'm going to do this really quickly, because this is going to be a conversation in another show. But what I want to share, because information is power. If you live in a low income area, your tax dollars are pulled in and put into your school. That is the reason why, with that, you do not have an Olympic-sized pool. You do not have the greatest teachers, that you do not have nice landscaping, right? Because your tax dollars is on the lower tier of money. If you are in the middle and higher up, where you can choose, again, still your tax dollars help to fund your teachers. And what people don't realize is that Title I schools get some money based off their taxes. But they're also but the other schools in those areas are being asked to use what you need, but send some of your money back to funnel into the Title I schools. So if they have $100 and they use 80 of it, you're only getting $20 back to that school, which means it's still not enough money to cover your deficit as a Title I school. So start being very clear and understand what you are doing, what your tax dollars are doing, and what you need out of your schools, because you're responsible for it. You are your child's first advocate. You are the one that's going to scream the loudest if it bothers you enough. And if you do not like the direction that you see your children's education and going into, go to the school board. It doesn't matter. It's time to make a change. Our children are suffering, and we are responsible for making sure that they can stop suffering when we have the answer to the question. So that's my only thing. Ladies, we're going to do a roundup. This has been amazing. So final thoughts.
I'll go ahead and we'll just go around in a circle again.
Yes. Do around a circle.
So I 100% agree, Tabitha. This has been a great conversation. As you're talking about Title I, it sparked something else in my mind, that one of the things that happens too with low income schools is a lot of times parents that are involved don't have the time or the energy to put into that advocating. So especially when their kids are older, having kids advocate can be unbelievably powerful. We were told at our school a few years ago that the air conditioning was broken. It was right before state testing in May in North Carolina. And we were told that the part was on back order and then it wouldn't be fixed before the school year was over. Well, the 8th graders were beside themselves because it was so ungodly hot. And one of the teachers said, if you're not happy, contact your school board. So they did. And the next morning, that air conditioner was fixed. So there is power in speaking up. Those kids wrote letters and called and said, our physical and mental health is not good because of the heat. We're not going to do well on our test scores. The school's not going to do well. The county's not going to do well. And lo and behold, that part was there and the air conditioner was fixed before school ended the next day. So, when you don't have the parents, get the kids to speak up, whenever possible.
Awesome. All right, now go ahead, Kirsten. Tell everybody how they can find you, where to find you.
Absolutely. Please jump, find me on LinkedIn. If you need an advocate, contact me. I will help anyone do whatever they need to do to better their life for their child or themselves. Please feel free on LinkedIn, or I'm also on Facebook as just Kristen Lynn. I will have a website coming soon, and I have a live show starting this Thursday at 4:15 Eastern Time.
Nice. Go ahead, girl.
Inclusion Advocates and Allies. Here we come.
All right. I want to be on that one too.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
you're on my list.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, cool.
Yes.
All right, Michelle, go ahead.
People matter. Our kids matter. We all have a voice, and we all need the ability to be able to communicate effectively in any situation and stand in our power. If we can all come together, we can make this world a better place, and we can save our children. So that's my message. And Tabitha, thank you so much for being here, for letting me be here.
Thank you for participating. This has been fun. All right now.
Thank you, Tabitha, for bringing me on. I greatly appreciate it. And so my final remark is understand that your child care provider is not a babysitter. They're also here to help. When you can't get some other services because we also service a low income community where we're located. There are people who love and care for your children, and that we're also here to help you with the resources to be able to get the advocacy you need before your child goes on, and to help them to learn. So thank you. And I'm on LinkedIn as well, Dr. Juanita.
Awesome. And I thank you very much for everybody attending. I thank you for all the comments that we had. A lot of great people: Phil, Elizabeth, Petra, Kristen, Diana. There's been a bunch of people out here. So I really do thank you all for chiming in and letting us know that we do, what we're talking about is important to you. So feel free to reach out. I am on LinkedIn for the most part. And so just go and look for us, find us, and hang out with us. So until next time, same place next week, we'll see you again. And thanks so much for sharing. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate the support and look forward to you visiting us again next week, same time, same place. Until then, words are power. Please remember to use them wisely. If you have an interest, like to be on our live show, please let us know and send us a direct message.